And I just cannot stand his preaching. And once I was like, I don't go to church when I know he's going to be there. It just drives me nuts. But there was one Sunday I didn't know he was going to be preaching, so I was stuck there, right? And I spent time in the middle of the sermon trying to figure out what is it I don't like about this so much, because his content was actually pretty good. And he was also, I would say, pretty vulnerable. Like he would share things that didn't make him look very flattering, or he would share things that had some level of deeper honesty. But he had a whole bunch of tricks that he employed. Like he would use fancy pronunciations of words. Like he would say constantly, he would say the Holy Spirit instead of the Holy Spirit. And he also would break into this Scottish brogue on a regular basis after having established that was his like family lineage. And people ate it up. I hated it because it became like he was acting. And in the middle of that sermon, the aha to me was there's a difference between vulnerability and authenticity. He was being vulnerable, but he was not being authentic. And his inauthenticity eliminated the benefit of the vulnerability.
It's interesting because so many people now are equating, right? They see vulnerability and authenticity as synonyms now.
Yes, right.
Because vulnerability is the new buzzword, catchword, and I love the conversation and the research and everything like Brene Brown and others are doing on it. And so everyone's talking about it, but now they're just equating that these are the same thing. But that's a great illustration of where it's not.
Right.
It's just not.
Yeah.
So I was thinking in a conversation I had this morning about what I do in my own life to cultivate authenticity. And I do think vulnerability is important and in the right place.
Absolutely.
See,
absolutely. I think, but vulnerability is a subset of authenticity.
Okay. So in a lot of the conversation I have on this podcast, we talk about when to know, when's the discernment, when to know, when to be authentic. And I think that's the wrong conversation, because I don't think there's ever a time not to be authentic. I think there's a time not to be vulnerable.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yes, agreed. Yes.
And I think I have been, even in my conversations recently, not clarifying that well enough as you just did. So I've got to give that a lot more thought as I continue on down this path of trying to help pastors with authenticity realize to discern between the two. Because you should always be your authentic, true self.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean you're always vulnerable or even transparent.